going on. Ashes Inquest on talkSPORT 2.
You are listening or watching on the talkSPORT Cricket YouTube channel or via talkSPORT 2 or on the Following On podcast feed. This is Following On Ashes Inquest. I'm Jon Norman. Alongside me as ever for the next 60 minutes is a man who has tasted Ashes success whilst playing for England. England haven't won the Ashes now in 11 years. Harmy, now that Ashes is over and Australia have won it 4-1, what do you think has disappointed you the most? Has it been England's batting, bowling or fielding?
You know what, John? I mean, I think all of it. I don't think you can put one. I don't think you can put it down to one discipline where we've been so bad, where this is where it's been lost. I think a collective unit from the minute we've set out our preparation plans to then going through our preparation plans to then doing the bat and bowl and fielding has always been that one step behind where Australia were. And that's why they've won 4-1. We can blame whatever we want about preparation, Noosa, Canberra, whatever. We can say we've made silly mistakes with the bat. You know, we've been scattergun with the ball. But at the end of the day, Australia put us under pressure. And I think that's where what disappoints me is that we haven't been able to, I don't think we've been in a position to withstand the pressure that Australia have put on us. And I think that comes down to a hell of a lot of things, you know, in the preparation, the mindset and everything that goes with it. So I think the bowling side of it had an effect on the batting. And I think the pressure side of not being able to be good enough with the bat and ball has magnified us, you know, losing them big moments in the field, which is us dropping 17 catches and the likes of Marnus Labuschagne taking one-handers and Alex Carey stand up to the stumps. They've just been on it, like all Australian teams are when they're in their own back garden. And what hurts the most, I think, is the encouragement that I think a lot of us had from a former player's point of view to a journalist's point of view to a fan's point of view, that this was a different England that was going to Australia and gonna, you know, give it back to Australia. In the end, it's been same old England. Simple as that. Same old England, where we've talked a good game. We've said we are a different side, but we weren't. Nowhere near. And if anything, when it comes to the bravado and the arrogance and the confidence that we've shown off for the last sort of 3 years, I think what we've done is we've highlighted that I think technically and ability-wise, we're nowhere near as good as the sides that have been into Australia in the past.
I agree. I mean, just reading Mike Atherton's piece in the Times, and one of the points we've been making, and many others have, is that there have been very few England players who will be walking away or flying away from Australia with their reputations enhanced. But actually, the same can be said for Australia. You know, across both sides, you'd struggle to put together an 11 that had a good Ashes. It's been quite.
Hey, John, I've got one here, and I've had to pick Jacob Battle as an opening batter. I've had to pick Jacob Battle as an opening batter, because if you want to pick a 1 to 11 from positions played, unfortunately, I couldn't pick a best. I couldn't pick a best 11 out of 5 Test matches and have Zach Crawley, Ben Duckett, or Jake Weatherall in it.
Yeah,
you just couldn't. They've been not good enough. You know, Travis stands out. You get Smith in at 3 because he batted at 3 in Perth. You know, a little bit of poetic license. You know, Bryden Cast is you've got Bryden Cast, Josh Tongue, or Jofra Archer for one of the only bowling slots that Australia haven't been able to fill if you don't pick a spinner, because bowling's been better than any of ours. Stark's been the best player on show. Nisa has been better than any of ours. So, I mean, Bryden's got some criticism because he's been expensive. But like we said yesterday, he's been there for the whole 5 Test matches. and Josh Tongue is probably 50-50 between him and Cars, who was probably the one from an England bowler's point of view that would get into a combined 11 for the Ashes. But when you look down the list, I mean, you got Ben Stokes in, he averaged 18, but he was better than Cam Green when it comes to the all-rounder. So, I mean, all in all, it just hasn't. The numbers, I think, reflect what the series has been, which has been, I think, a good series when it comes from Australia's point of view, but it's been a one of very, very poor quality. The pitches haven't helped.
No, the pitches haven't helped. But I can't disagree. I don't think Stokes or Green get in. I mean, if we're not picking a spinner, you don't have to pick an all-rounder, do you? True. Yeah, but then you go, right, which other bat? If you're gonna go down that route, which other batter do you put in? I mean, Crawley averaged 27. Look at average 20. Pope averaged 20. Yeah, you won't be looking at the English, will you?
No, but even the Australian, Khawaja, they didn't pull any trees up themselves, if you know what I mean. England have been beaten. And I think when you look at it, if you look at performers that were on show, class performers, test match class performers that warrant to be there near in lights as an international performer playing the Ashes in front of 50,000, 60,000, 100,000 on Boxing Day. Australia have had Mitchell Starc, Travis Head, Alex Carey, Steve Smith. England have had Joe Root, not even Ben Stokes. Ben Stokes with the ball, Jofra Archer. That I think probably you could say test match class, test match quality. Carstens kept going, but it wasn't as much test match quality. Harry Brook, fits and starts, but the way he got out over 5 test matches in 10 innings, that's not test match quality. And I think you can keep going down the list. But there's been very, very little of high quality performers on show. Australia probably had the sort of best ones and one of the biggest moments.
Let's hear from the England skipper, Ben Stokes, speaking with TNT.
For a while, teams are understanding how to operate against us as a team. When we seem to get into into a situation with the bat where everything looks very, very easy, opposition are doing a lot of the same things to us now. And we need to work out what we do in those situations a lot better. Because I think we play too much 3 out of 10 cricket, if that makes sense, in terms of the chances of it coming off. And when you play a lot of cricket like that, the likelihood is that it's not really going to fall your way in big moments. And understanding when situations are in front of us and understanding why the opposition are doing that to us, we need to work out a lot better, especially as the pair and a group when we're out there. And as I hope that makes sense, because I've just seen it sort of happen quite a lot throughout this series and also a couple of series before. And this one in particular, I think we can all be very honest with ourselves as a team that we have done a bit of the damage to ourselves.
And you and Brendan will go away now. There's got to be some real diamonds that have come through. Josh Tongue, excellent. Jacob Bethel yesterday. You got the bones of a very, very good cricket team. So they're one of the main positives. And also, is there any areas where you need to fill to become a great test team?
Well, that's the thing. It's it's always frustrating when you lose games and you lose series. And when I sit in that dressing room and you look around the players that we have within the squad, not just the playing 11, but the people who are ready to come in, you go, like, unbelievable player, unbelievable player, unbelievable player. And that's sometimes where when you lose a series in the way that we have done, that's why it makes it even more frustrating. And as I say, it's up to the people like myself and Brendan and the leaders within the group to actually be quite honest and truthful as a team, because I feel like the first couple of years that we were in charge, we did some unbelievable things in terms of not only results but also getting the best out of people who, I don't know, might not have known that they were as good as what they were, and now everyone has performed on the biggest stage, and now it's about making sure that we do that consistently. And yeah, just being better at understanding huge moments and understanding as to why teams are operating a certain way against us and coming up with a way to counteract it.
Ben, we spoke sort of 10 days ago before this game and you were absolutely adamant. You wanted to carry on. You want Brendan alongside you and the whole management team. I mean, I'm going to say I presume that hasn't changed. You tell me. And then, I mean, you gave a really good explanation there about what you think needs to change or what you would like to change. But how do you keep developing moving forward? Yeah,
well, I mean, how we develop is be pretty honest and straightforward, and you don't progress, I think, unless you do have some pretty honest and truthful conversations. And you know, I remember I've been young and I've had some stuff thrown at me that I didn't quite like, but I can always look back and you know, go, I know that was told to me for the right reasons. I remember being pulled into his room a couple of times when he was captain. I didn't like what he said, but when you look back on those moments, you go, oh, this guy wants what's best for me, and the only thing that I want for everyone in that dressing room is the best for them and giving them the best chance possible at being very, very successful international players, which everyone in there I know can do. Yeah, just need a little bit of a recalibration, and yeah, 6 month time in June, hopefully we've done that and we're better.
I just want to ask, when does that period start? Because the cricket schedule is so relentless. Jacob just said, I'll go to Sri Lanka in 10 days. You know, I think Josh Tongue said, I've got 6 days at home and then I'm gone again. So when does that period start? Is there enough time to have those honest conversations?
Yeah, it is very tricky. And gosh, you know, I've got, say we don't have a test series till June, so I'll be plotting my way through the next 6 months about getting ready for that game. Whereas some of the guys who are here have just, you know, been involved in a pretty high intensity series have to wake up in the morning and go, oh, I go away in a week, in a completely different format, in a completely different country, and they're away again. So it's absolutely brutal for them. But that time that we have in between there, that's where it's up to me, up to Brendan, Rob, and the guys who sit above sort of the players, if that makes sense, to put together something that we can just go, right, this is what we expect. If people aren't willing or you know, wanting to meet those expectations, then you know, I have got a ruthless side to me, and yeah.
Well, we've seen that in Australia. We've seen the ruthless side to you. So, and from Australia's point of view, we see it. We see you've been a great warrior, mate, and it's just great to, you know, if you get those right people, mate. I think this team could become a really great cricket team.
No, I definitely agree with you. And again, we've got the right people, JL. It's about using the people that we have in there with experience, and you know, I just want to push these guys as far as they can, and yeah, there's a lot more than just sort of what goes on out in the field and all that kind of stuff that I think I can do a much better job at as being captain and as a leader. And you know, we made some big mistakes out here on this tour as players, and you know, I hold my hands up and say I've made some mistakes as captain throughout this as well. So you've just got to be big enough and brave enough to tell yourself that as an individual. And this isn't a blame culture or anything like that. As soon as blame culture starts creeping into anything, that's the downfall of everything. It's about taking responsibility, ownership, and really understanding where we're at the moment if we want to take ourselves to the next level again.
Well, thanks to TNT Sports there. Justin Langer and speaking, and Becky I was speaking with Ben Stokes. There's a lot to unpick there, Harmy, but let's concentrate on what he said about being ruthless. Of that England squad that travelled to Australia, who would you hang your hat on being part of the 11 that takes the field against New Zealand, injuries permitting, in June?
There's a lot of time. I think we've got to say there's a lot of time between now and June to find out where these players are at. Where's their roadmap into the preparation for what comes with June? What their numbers are? Have they learned from the mistakes? Zach Crawley, I think did NASA say yesterday, I think a couple of days ago, about Zach Crawley. He averages, what does he average? He averages 30 now in 90. That's in 64 test matches. In 90 test matches, you'll still be averaging 30. So you have to ask questions there. I don't think Ollie Pope's in the conversation anymore. Ben Duckett, was he ready for the test match? Was he ready for Australia? Ready for the test series? Didn't have an answer to the sort of the plans that Australia put to him, but I still think he's got enough credit in the bank. Brooke, Stokes, they're going nowhere. Yeah, they're still our best players. I think Jamie Smith needs a period where I actually think get him away from the game, get him away from the game, because I think that he looked He looked tired. He looked mentally fatigued, and he looked as though he's had a hard few months. But he's still, for me, a top quality player. But what has the Ashes scarring done to him? And then it always comes down to the conundrum of the bowlers. You're only a good captain. You're only a good team if you've got a bowling attack which has got a variation about it, which can take 20 wickets on any given surface in a Test series. We haven't got a spinner. I mean, our spinner is fighting as a 22-year-old at his fourth or fifth county. So the mistakes that England have made, we say about which ones are going and the ruthless side. The mistakes that have been made in selection and backing these players and having blind faith towards these players has put England in this position. And I think that's got to change before we work out who is going on the next part of the journey with Ben Stokes. There is a ruthless side. I think Ben might have to look within himself from a ruthless point of view to go, do you know what? When I got to Australia, I was in the best shape of my life. And I think he was. I really do. Even though he got injured in the last Test match and he hasn't been able to fulfill his all-rounder skills for 5 Test matches, Ben Stokes was ready for Australia physically, and whether he was mentally, I'm not so sure, because we only know that if you get inside the head of that person. The thing I would be looking around if I was Ben Stokes, if you want to be ruthless, look around the room. Was everybody else? Were you ready? Were you fit enough and ready enough? And had you been prepared enough to get yourself ready for that first ball in Perth? And I'm not so sure everybody was. So who goes on that journey? Probably looking at, you start with the basics and go Root, Brook, Stokes, Bethel now probably stays in at number 3. And then you have a bowling unit that you think you can get 20 wickets on. Because the easiest thing in the world would be to try and bluff our way to say, right, Key McCullum, Stokes have got enough credit in the bank for what they did in the first couple of years to get themselves in a position to put this right. England go and play New Zealand and Pakistan at home and they should win 6-0. Not a problem. We should be winning at home. But if we are just papering over the cracks to give ourselves a chance to go, right, we've learned from our mistakes. Well, I want to see them, have you learned from your mistakes? And that is going to be the $1 million question from the noises from above and the message from above. And that's why I've said consistently on this, we can't throw everything out. And the person for me who should be the one that's held accountable is the one that coaches the side, the one that holds the environment, drives the environment, makes sure the players are prepared, make sure that they're ready and able to fulfill their skills and their duties as a professional sportsman and a cricketer. And I think that's been found way, way too short. They've admitted to it, but I think it's been so catastrophically short that I think that is the one I think England have got to look at from a position point of view of who goes on the next part of the journey.
I completely agree. I think Zach Crawley's race is now run. I don't think we will know or see anything more from Zach Crawley, which we haven't already seen and know. He is an inconsistent opening bat who has talent, but essentially hasn't been able to be consistent. And it's all well and good averaging over 50 against Rabada and Bumrah and blah, blah, blah. As the stat was going around this week, if you're averaging 30 after 65 Test matches, then, you know, it's time for somebody else to have a go. Yeah. England need consistency. If there's any position where you need consistency, it is within your openers. Not that England have had much consistency, good consistency. I would be very nervous if I was, let's put it this way, Harmy, I think Surrey might be quite strong this year because I think that Gus Atkinson missing the Test match after Ben Stokes made a comment about no place for weak men, and he was the only person to get dropped after that Test match. I'd be concerned if I was Gus. I would be concerned if I was Jamie Smith. The manner of his dismissals, the quietness behind the stumps, and also he's not a wicketkeeper, you know, and I think that there are some basics that we need to adhere to. Again, opening bowlers opening the bowling for England, who opened the bowling for their counties. Wicket keepers. I don't mind a wicket keeper batter or a batter wicket keeper. That's been the way of the world since Alex Stewart for England. So, it's 30 years now, right? But the wicketkeeper batter has got to be the wicketkeeper batter for their county. And unfortunately, Jamie Smith has been found wanting with the bat as well as behind the stumps. So I would be very concerned if I was Smith, very concerned if I was Atkinson, very concerned if I was Crawley. And you're totally right, Ollie Pope will probably come back, but not now. So Surrey, it could be a huge plus for Surrey. Shoaib Bashir, I mean, good luck to the guy. I think he just needs a county and then just let him bowl. Hopefully he can bowl for 2 or 3 years and then we'll see where we are. Who replaces him? I don't know. I think they'll look at Rue, the older brother, possibly. And then maybe it'll be a Sibley or a McKinney or a Hamid or a I don't know who as opener. In terms of the bowling, the other one, I am hopeful but not expecting Jofra Archer. I still don't know where this England team sit with Archer. Stokes has mentioned the fact that he's put a lot of work in outside of cricket to get to know Jofra. And they've got some business ventures, I think they're connected. And you know what? I think Archer did what he needed to do. Nobody thought he'd bowl more than 3 tests. He bowled 3 tests, and as soon as the Ashes was over, he went home, and that's fine. As far as I'm concerned, there was a lot of noise about Archer, about him getting vocal to Steve Smith when the Test match was lost, but very little about Stokes getting vocal, when the series was lost. So that was just noise as far as I'm concerned. I'm hopeful we've seen Archer, and we'll see him again, but I'd say there's probably a question mark. And the reason for that is it's not always what Stokes says, it's what he doesn't say. Who were the bowlers that he flagged up? Bryden Carse and Josh Tongue. Rightly so with Carse. You know what a mess his feet are going to be. And he did. He ran in. He ran in from beginning to end. He was infuriating to watch at times. But he ran in and every time he was throwing the ball, he did what he was asked. And Josh Tongue should have played more Test matches. We said this during the summer. This is a guy that can get rid of set batters with, worldy deliveries. So it'd be really interesting to see how he goes. I still can't quite see how you have both Tongue and Carse in the team if Stokes can't bowl. And that's the other problem, Stokes batting. It just hasn't been where it needs to be for years. So, I think there's a period of reflection and the ruthlessness will come. Ollie Pope, I think, is probably the only batter that's been dropped mid-series. So, that would be really, really interesting. There's also, of course, question marks about the coach, Brendan McCullum. He also caught up with TNT. Let's hear what he had to say.
I've already put my hand up and said that we haven't quite got everything right when it comes to our preparation. That's not just before the first test, but it's also in between the first and the second test as well. I sort of look at, from our point of view, we asked for the whacker. That narrative around us not playing in the whacker and not asking for the whacker is not right. We asked for the whacker. We were told that we couldn't. We were offered up Adelaide, which was going to involve the travel and obviously completely different surface to what we're going to have at Optus. So we tried to make do with what we had. We had a white ball series in New Zealand, which when it comes to World Cup points as well was quite important, or World Cup qualification. So we went with the preparation, which has been successful in the last 3.5 years, which unfortunately didn't work. It was looking pretty good when we were 50 runs in front after the first innings on the snake pit in the first test match, but we go on and lose, and then I think we ended up losing a little bit of that edge as we went into the second test with the long layover we had. So again, these are aspects which you look at in time and you go, well, how do you make sure that doesn't happen again? How do you ensure that the preparation is best as what you possibly can, keeping in mind that there is no perfect preparation. Teams have come down here before, they've had 3, 4, 5 warm-up games and they've been absolutely hammered. So, there is no perfect preparation, but it doesn't mean that we're not going to look at it and say, what can we do differently next time?
How frustrating is that narrative that's been sown that you didn't ask for Perth, you didn't ask the WACA, and because that's certainly what's going on behind the scenes. People saying, well, they've done it's their own fault, they didn't want the WACA.
Yeah, well, it's just not true, right?
No. So how frustrating is that?
Well, it's frustrating if you let it. I mean, in the end, you know what's right and what's wrong, and you know what's true and what's not. We tried to get the preparation that we wanted, and we weren't able to get it. So you cop it sweet and you move on.
As coaches, as you said, we love our boys, right? And even though the result hasn't gone your way, you must be pumped about the future with Jacob Bethel, with Josh Tongue, the way Cast ran, and you've got your senior pros, of course. But those are the guys who help us get out of bed in the morning, right?
Yeah, that's right, Jay. And that's, I mean, I've been just asked before about whether you're keen to carry on in the role as coach, and I am keen, and that's because I believe the progress we made over the last 3.5 years. Keep in mind when we took over where we were at as a team and what we've been able to achieve over the last 3.5 years. Whilst we didn't get the ultimate prize, which is to come down here and succeed, we have become a better cricket team. And if you look at the average age, the amount of games that sit within that dressing room, it is still quite raw. Apart from obviously Rooty and Stokesy, it is quite a young and still yet to mature cricket side, and that's what gives you the confidence and the ambition to be a part of trying to take this team moving forward. And ultimately those decisions around whether you stay in the job, they're not yours anyway. So, as far as I'm concerned, I am keen to carry on, and that's because of the excitement that sits within the playing group and what we could achieve with the side over the next couple of years.
Should he stay on then, Harmy?
Well, I'd like him to stay on, but I'm just not sure. I'm not sure how he does. I'd like him to stay on because I think he's done enough. If we look at it in the series in isolation alone, then he hasn't really got a leg to stand on. He admitted the preparation wasn't good. He's admitted where England have fallen short, and that large proportions of that are down to the coach. I think if you look at his period as England coach, Brendan McCullum's done a lot of good things. He has done a hell of a lot of good things over the course of three and a half years. The feel-good factor that we had off the back of them 2 years, when he first came into the job and where this team has come, I think has complacency set in. Have England been too easy to play against? Like what Ben Stokes was saying earlier, have we had far too many blind faith in players like Crawley and Pope and Bashir and people like that? Part of me thinks, you know what, he should carry on and deserve the chance to put it right. But the other side of me is also thinking, if you get it so badly wrong with everything going into the start of the series and you lose 4-1 in Australia, somebody carries the can. Stokes is our only leader. I think, again, looking at Keezy's job, Keezy's done a hell of a lot of good things as well behind the scenes, getting pathways back up and running off the back of COVID when he took over. We've got some exciting young talented cricketers coming through. Rob Key's job is more than just the England cricket team. It's building a conveyor belt to come through, and that is going to be challenged now. So I think that's why I wouldn't like to see Rob Key lose his job. But I think if we are looking for somebody that is probably vulnerable, it would be Brendan. I would really like to see what he does and how ruthless Ben and Brendan can be and what June looks like. I think Brendan has got to have a good World T20. And if he does, give him a chance to put a lot of things right, because he is a shrewd man. He is a calculated man, but unfortunately, he is like Ian own admission, he's a gambler. And I think there's been some gambles in his faith towards players which haven't paid off. I'm not going to say his players have let him down, but at the end of the day, part of me thinks I want to see him carry on because I think he's been good for English cricket. England are great to watch. They're a good team to follow. I mean, they are a good bunch of human beings. But unfortunately, for it to go so badly wrong, unfortunately, somebody has to carry the can. And if it is, I think it might be on the coach's door and not on the director of cricket or the captains, because he has to set the environment. He sets the tone. He sets the method. He is the one that make sure that every stone is uncovered, to make sure that we have got everything we need to fulfill our skills as players in Australia, in India, and his record against the best two teams in the world. When we talk about international cricket at Test match level is a 3-team powerhouse, I think that over the course of the last 18 months has been found wanting.
Harry Brook is on a final warning about his conduct after a late-night altercation with the bouncer just hours before captaining England on the tour that preceded the Ashes. A story in the Daily Telegraph, which has just landed, timing of which must have been decided a few days ago. Brook was close to being sacked as white ball captain after an investigation by the team's management. Got in an altercation with the bouncer, fined £30,000, the maximum amount possible by the ECB for the incident. We'll talk about that and more. And we're going to cross to Australia, Sydney, speak to Robert Crash Craddock from the Brisbane Courier Mail, Code Sport cricket writer, here on Following On Ashes Inquest.
Hitting you for 6 with top order cricket conversation. Following On Ashes Inquest on talkSPORT 2. On DAB, online, on the app and on your smart speaker.
Order, order! All rise for Following On Ashes Inquest
on talkSPORT 2.
You are joining us on Following On Ashes Inquest. I'm Jon Norman. Alongside me, Steve Harmison. We will be crossing over to Australia very shortly. I'm just trying to catch my producer's eye to see if he is there. Robert Crash Craddock from Code Sports, the Brisbane Courier Mail, is with us now and joins us on the show. Crash, thanks for joining us on Following On Ashes Inquest. Well, it wasn't close. Couldn't move for players on both sides saying that was the best test of the Ashes. Well, if that was the best test, it doesn't say a great deal for the series as a whole, but we've had a bit of negativity for the first half an hour of this show. Let's have a bit of positivity. From an Australian perspective, Mitchell Starc, fitting that he picked up the final 2 wickets today in the England innings. It's not often fast bowlers get better as they get older, but he is certainly somebody that has broken the mould in so many different ways across the course of his illustrious career.
Yeah, John, when he first started, he was in and out of the team. You know, he was regularly dropped. But you know what? Shane Warne called him weak, and that almost became the acorn on his seat that drove him to be everything but weak. You know, his pace, his consistency, his fitness, his passion for Test cricket. I reckon he's surrendered up to $10 million in IPL deals where he just didn't want to play in that competition for 6 or so years so he could play Test. So he's been a dream. He really has. 31 wickets in the series. It's rare. And, you know, that's 5 wickets a Test and playing every Test. So, yeah, he's quite special.
Yeah, Crash, I mean, John's talking about positivity. It's positivity. It's 4-1, and it's a comfortable win for Australia. But there's still some huge question marks in Australia. I mean, Weatherall was poor. Labuschagne wasn't the Labuschagne we're probably expecting. Khawaja's gone and retired. Green looks so out of kilter. Don't know what to do with Webster. I mean, the list goes on. Who's going to be your fast bowlers? Because Doggett did all right. Nisa's getting on. Richardson played once. And Lyon's body let him down again. So as much as it was 4-1, there's some questions for Australia as well.
Huge questions, Harmy. And here's the thing. In the next year and a half, they're playing South Africa in South Africa, India in India, and England in England, with a team which will change by the Test. So I sense this is the glorious high point of this generation. And from here on, it just gets tougher. Now, you know, everyone who was called into action rose to the occasion. Bo Webster did. Michael Nisa did. You know, Scott Boland, no one expected him to play 5 Tests. He did and took 20 wickets. Really good effort. But these guys are getting on. So I think England will win the next Ashes over there. But to do so, they're going to have to change their game plan. Now, in the press conference, Ben Stokes said today that he said, we've got to go back to the drawing board. He used those terms. He said, and you've said this, Steve, in your column, that England were great with Bazball for 2.5 years. Then they played India and Australia, and it all sort of went awry. So he said, yeah, we got to recalibrate. And they do.
Crash, one of the questions asked of Steve Smith was whether he's going to be playing in that 2027 Ashes, and he was a bit coy about it. Has he finally fallen out of love with cricket?
Oh, no, look, John, he's a cricket nuffy, but he does live in New York now. He knows he hasn't got far to go, but he also knows this. There's just 2 uncharted peaks in his career, India in India and England in England, and I think he'll have one last dash at both of them. Now, he's not quite what he was, I have to say that, but he's still pretty good. And you know you're going to get a century a series out of him in a team with so many new batting faces, which that one will have. So I think Andrew McDonald will say to him soon, let's do Mission India and England, okay? I know, you know, he probably doesn't want to go back to South Africa with memories of Sandpaper Gate and all that, but they will do anything to get him on those last 2 tours, John. I'll make this statement. If he doesn't go, they can't win either of them.
That's a big call. I mean, Crash, as somebody who was part of an opened up bus parade, where does this fit in? You know, how does Australia celebrate this? You know, because like we said before, we're in England. It's 4-1. We know what England's mistakes were. But how do Australia celebrate winning the Ashes? Because there was a lot of talk about it being a close series. In the end, it hasn't been. But where do Australia sit with a celebration, and how do they look and reflect over there about how these last 7 weeks have gone?
I watched the players out in the field, Harmy, and it was interesting. This is just an hour ago. There was a sense of satisfaction and quiet contentment amongst them. But the reaction amongst the people in the street, and I just got a taxi driver back and we were talking about it, it wasn't regarded as a great series. You made a statement I thought was very good where you said you were hoping this series would put franchise cricket in its place. and we could pound the pulpit and say, this is why we need Test cricket, because it's electrified the whole scene. Well, he never quite got there. And I think we've got to concede that. It was a bit of a damp squib. There was barely any really... Yeah, there was great moments, but not many great days. Not many days when you floated out of the press box. So, yeah, once again, Harmy, and we said it 4 weeks ago, and 5 weeks ago, and I'll say it again. In my lifetime, there's never been a competitive Ashes series in Australia. England won 2, Australia won the rest. Lopsided. God, it's disappointing.
On the subject of disappointment, if you could put your finger on one aspect only about England's performance over the last 7 weeks, where would you set your gaze? On what area?
Well, 3 quick ones. One, best quote came from Michael Vaughan. Baseball doesn't like the 1%ers. They're boring. But, practice, playing trial games, warm-up games against states, that's part of winning Ashes tours. Boredom. You need to be bored occasionally to win. Secondly, you cannot come here without adequate support coaches. Paul Collingwood vanished from public view mysteriously and apparently won't be back. But you need a fielding coach. You need blokes who play T20 cricket and aren't used to fielding in the slips. Get used to fielding in the slips. You get your lengths right, how far you stand back. And the third one, and the big one, John, I made many predictions on this series that haven't come true, but the one that did, and on this podcast we said, Mark Wood hadn't played since February 26, the 26th of February. You can't come to Australia and play 3 or 4 tests with no cricket for, 7 months, 8 months? It's tour after tour. We see teams try it, and I promise you, it never works, ever. And Joffa was so underdone. Very good, but underdone.
Crash, just finally from me, and a quick one. All seen, all done, 7 weeks, 7.5 weeks, 4-1. Do you think England came and thought there's nothing better to do than just turn up? Do you think England came too complacent?
No, I don't think they thought they were automatically going to win, but I just felt the McCullum mantra. And, I saw Brendan McCullum play for the Brisbane Heat. And Harmy, it was a really jaunty period. He opened the batting with Chris Lynn and they'd score 70 or 45. They didn't win anything, you know what I mean? And I saw him captain New Zealand, and I like the guy, but he changed the field every 3 overs and was all, they weren't really held accountable. I just felt that they were floating. Not complacent, Harmy, but just floating in this happy-go-lucky world. And I'm sorry, Australia are tough in Australia. This is not a great Australian team. They were beatable. They really were. But that you weren't hard enough conditioned, your match plans weren't tight enough. Australia came up with a couple of clever plays, such as putting Alex Carey over the stumps. Really good move. And they were outfoxed. But if there's one bonus for England, it's this. They go home now knowing what it's like to play in second gear and third gear instead of just fourth all the time, So, but I can't wait for the next Ashes series. And if I get there, I'm coming to Ashington, your hometown. I'm going to your pub, and this is the goal of mine. And I'm going to say to the public, can you find Steve Harmison for me? I'm throwing 200 quid on the bar. And I'm doing a feature on Steve, and I want everyone to tell me a Steve Harmison story. I can't wait. Seriously.
To be fair, Crash, if you go in my bar and you ask my public and where I am, I think you'll point in the corner rather than ring somebody up and say, "Can you find where he is?"
I just love that thought.
I'd love you to come.
Crash,
it's just one of the things, because I've always loved your family connection. I know you're a granddad. You love your grandkids and your kids. They're all around you there at Ashington. Mate, you won't have a boring day in your life. And I just think, I'd just love to see it once and sit there with a pint of lager and just mix among your family and just see the magic of it all. Oh, yeah. Because that's the tours of England. For a lot of Australians going to England, when they used to go to the Copthorne Hotel in Manchester, the Australians had played league cricket, And you'd see the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, who they play with in club cricket, come into the bar. Oh, they were the best of times, I tell you.
My life is baseball on steroids. That's where my grandkids, kids, and everything come. So no, I'd love to see you in 2 years' time, friend.
Oh dear.
Crash, thanks so much for your insight over the course of the last 7 or 8 weeks. You're, of course, a regular face on the Cricket Collective show, which is also available on the Following On podcast feed. And it's not even 2 years. It's next year, guys. It's actually next year. So we don't have to wait that long, although Crash probably hasn't heard that you stopped drinking, Harmy. So
I'll be back on it by then.
I'm sure you will. Crash, thanks for everything, matey. You've been absolutely brilliant. Harmy, a story is just breaking about Harry Brook. It sounds like he got into a bit of a scrape in New Zealand. When you're talking about accountability is one of those questions. We don't know the ins and outs of this story, by the way, so I'm not going to get your views on what may or may not have occurred. But when you were talking about, whether players were ready physically, mentally for this Ashes series, then obviously stories like that aren't going to help. But to flip it on its head, I have been so impressed by Jacob Bethel. He was speaking after the game again today. He spoke after the game yesterday. This is a guy who has impressed everybody, not just with his shot selection, his ability to stand up to pressure, his ability to perform on the highest stage, but also he knows his game. He is wise beyond his years. And actually, this is a guy, and I think Simon Wilde wrote this in the Times yesterday, that screams captaincy material way more than Harry Brook does.
Yeah, I mean, we don't. This is the thing. The beauty about we don't know what's going on inside. There's two sides to every story. So
we don't need to talk about that. But
but I think what I'm trying to say is what goes on behind closed doors and what is seen. I think there's two sides to every story. So we let the Harry Brook stuff play out and see where we get to, whether there's more to it or whatever. So I think that's important to see. And what we don't know from inside is that's been on Harry's mind, but you can now see it in performance and play. And you can also see what goes on behind with decisions that are made, especially with somebody like Jacob Bethel, because he went to Ireland and captained England in a one-day series where everybody was having a go at what on earth are these lot doing? Are they just making things up as they go along? That was what was thrown at Key and McCullum. Was it McCullum? Yeah, I think it was McCullum. Trescothick took the team, but I think McCullum was still down as white ball coach. But now, listening to Jacob, seeing the way he's played and listening to him, you go, yeah, there is something in there. There is captaincy material. So this is where I think sometimes when emotions are raw, you do have to take a step back. You do have to let things breathe. You do have to make calculated and adult decisions once you've got all the information in. Harry Brooks has just dropped. We've just seen what's happening. We don't know what else is going to happen. We don't know the full ins and outs. We've only seen what we've seen on TV, that England have played the way they've played and they've lost 4-1 in the preparation of where they're going. And just let it calm down. Let them make some adult, sort of have some adult conversations and make some sort of calculated decisions when the emotions is out. But when Jacob Bethel became captain in Ireland, there was a hell of a lot of, I think, negativity towards that decision, towards the management team. But now, over the course of the last probably 72 hours that he's done the media 3 times at the end of each day, you listen to a young man speak and you think, wow, yeah, there's a head on that shoulders there that is a lot older than its years, and he could be a future captain. But first things first, he's got to get hundreds. He's got his first one, and it's about him now evolving as a player to then warrant the job as a captain. And I think Harry Brook had done that, and that's why he became vice captain. That's why he's got the white ball job. And I think Jacob Bethel, if there is a decision to be made, then I'm sure he'll put his hand up, and there'll be an option there. But like I said before, you've got to you don't know what's going on inside, and I think that's important now, just to stay calm and make rational decisions.
Let's finish the show with the captain, Ben Stokes, because we did hear from him a bit earlier. He did talk a lot about essentially getting the best out of his players and making sure they perform when it really matters. And the point he made, one of the points he made was, for the first 18 months, I think, and we spoke about this at length, what he got out of players, unheralded players, I thought was phenomenal. You know, going to India and getting a tune out of Bashir, getting a tune out of Jamie Smith and Gus Atkinson. Gus Atkinson replaced Jimmy Anderson and was on the Lord's Honours Board 4 times in like 2 tests or something ridiculous. Bashir, we know, did really well in India. Jamie Smith came in and performed. Jamie Overton came in and performed. Matthew Potts came in and performed. There's a lot of cricketers that came into that England setup and immediately found themselves at home and they performed. Jacob Bethel. But it's tailed off, as he's mentioned, over the last 18 months. I'm still not quite sure what it is, apart from just winning games of cricket, what it is that has changed. Is it not necessarily that his captaincy needs improving, although he was, will admit that he didn't get everything right, and he clearly didn't get everything right in this Ashes series. Is it about players improving, or do you think it's about realising that some of these players are never going to reach the standards that you want of them and changing them?
Yeah, there's a lot in the sort of captaincy debate. I think you answered most of it, the question yourself, because you said performing about 6 or 7 times. England players aren't performing. So as a captain, if your players aren't performing, you've got very little chance. Ben Stokes has made mistakes. But I think if Ben Stokes is to go home, gets back to Durham, sits down middle of January, February, puts it all down and watches that series again and writes down the mistakes he's made in this series, I think they've been contributed largely down to the performance of others. I'm not defending his captaincy because I think he has made mistakes. But I think what he has done as well, and I think this is the biggest mistake he's made, along with Brendan and Rob, is have had a bit of blind faith in what happened in the first 18 months. That Ben Stokes has wanted to change the culture and how England play red ball cricket off the back of winning once in 17 games, to then going so far himself to get them to change it. He's got them in a position, and he's gone so far with them players and trusted them players that they are the ones I want to take on this next journey. But unfortunately, when it come up against the big boys, them players weren't good enough. Simple as that. They weren't good enough. So then you flip it on its head and you get to a point where for the last 18 months, them players have been battered and been scarred, and confidence have gone a bit lower and potentially believed in their own hype. You then get to a point where you go to Australia, which, like Robert Crash Craddock has said, has been such a tough place to tour for any England player, even in their prime. All of a sudden, you have to nail your performance. And I would imagine a lot of mistakes made by Stokes have been compounded by the performance of individual players in his team, which he's guilty of, Brendan's guilty of, sticking by them when possibly 6 to 12 months ago, the writing was on the wall going, they're not good enough to go to Australia and play technically and mentally against any Australia side. And I think that's his biggest, I think that's probably been his biggest mistake, is that he's molded a team and they've had a bit of blind faith and the players haven't performed for him. And I think he can look at himself in the mirror and go, do you know what? I did everything I possibly could to get myself, like I said before, in a position to be ready for this test series. Can I say that about all 16 of the members that went on that tour? And I think that, for me, would be the one that would let me down when the lights are off and the door's closed and I'm lying in bed at night by myself.
Harmy, thanks so much for the last 7 weeks or so. We'll be back reunited probably within the next... Oh, I'll see you on Monday, actually. We'll do it all over again. So it's not like it's ending. But it's been brilliant. And it's been brilliant having so many people listening and messaging us and interacting with the show and subscribing and downloading and all the things that you do these days. But, it's not ended the way that we wanted it to. I mean, England did win the toss 4 times out of 5, so I suppose that's something they could take from the series, right? But unfortunately, they lost it 4-1 as well. So we'll be back. Thanks so much for joining us. This has been Following On Ashes Inquest.
A pitch-perfect delivery of superior cricket conversation. This is Following On Ashes Inquest on talkSPORT 2.